It was supposed to be a perfect wedding night, music, lights, and power on full display. But when a millionaire husband suddenly slaps his pregnant wife in front of hundreds of guests, that one act doesn't just break her heart, it ignites a storm that will destroy an empire. Because when his father, the powerful CEO, watches the security footage and sees what his son has done, he makes a choice no one expects. He turns against his own blood to stand with justice. What follows is a battle of family, betrayal, and truth. And believe me, you won't see the ending coming until we dive in. Tell us what time you're watching and where you're tuning in from. Drop a comment below. We'd love to hear from you. The champagne flute slipped from her hand before the pain registered. It shattered against the marble patio, a small explosion of glass and gold liquid. The next sound was louder, sharper, a human sound. Flesh against flesh. Dominic's palm hit Grace's cheek with such force that her head snapped to the side and a ripple of gasps swept through the garden. The music stopped mid-note. The string quartet froze. The bride's laughter died. For a heartbeat, the only sound was the champagne still dripping from the tablecloth. Grace's body tilted backward. Her heels scraped against the stone. She caught herself on the fountain behind her, water splashing up against her wrist. Her face burned, her ears rang, and the world around her blurred. Her husband stood over her, Dominic Ashford, 38 years old, heir to the Ashford fortune, admired, photographed, envied. His chest heaved. His face twisted, half rage and half disbelief at what he had just done. For an instant, Grace saw the real man, stripped of charm and polish, and she felt her stomach tighten with both fear and nausea. The baby inside her kicked hard. The impact in her belly almost matched the sting on her cheek. 7 months pregnant and still trying to breathe in a world that never let her speak. "Dominic," someone whispered. "What happened?" He blinked. The mask came back. His voice dropped into its usual calm tone, the one that convinced reporters and investors that everything was under control. "She slipped," he said quickly. "The heat, the pregnancy." She lost her balance. Grace's fingers brushed her cheek. Her palm came away red. "No," she said quietly. "You hit me." The words seemed to hang in the humid night air, louder than the music that had stopped. A murmur ran through the guests. Some looked away. Others pretended to adjust their jewelry or refill their glasses. Nobody wanted to get involved. No one wanted to offend the Ashfords. Dominic stepped closer, forcing his voice into gentleness. "Grace, you're confused. You fainted, that's all." "I didn't faint," she said again, louder this time. The baby kicked once more as if agreeing. From across the garden, Harper pushed through the crowd. Her pale pink bridesmaid dress trailed behind her as she ran. She reached Grace's side, her eyes wide with shock. "Grace, are you okay? I saw everything." Dominic's jaw tightened. "You saw her stumble," he corrected. "You saw me trying to catch her." Harper ignored him. She slid an arm around Grace's shoulders. "You need to sit down. Come with me." Above them, on the stone pillars and balcony railings, 16 security cameras blinked red. They had recorded everything: the slap, the sound, the exact second Dominic's hand left her face. But nobody was thinking about cameras yet. They were thinking about reputation. Natalie Ashford, Dominic's mother, arrived next. Her diamonds flashed beneath the chandeliers strung across the garden. She smiled the kind of smile that had diffused scandals for decades. "Grace, darling," she said smoothly, "you must rest. It's far too warm out here. Let's get you inside." Grace stared at her. "Your son just hit me." Natalie's smile didn't falter. "Sweetheart, you stumbled. The marble is slippery." Everyone saw Dominic trying to help. Grace laughed once, a bitter, disbelieving sound. "You're really going to stand here and lie?" "Think of the baby," Natalie said softly, lowering her voice so only Grace could hear. "You don't want to start rumors. You don't want Charlotte growing up with shame attached to her name." Charlotte, the name they had chosen for their unborn daughter. Grace's heart twisted. "You don't get to use her against me." Dominic's hand closed around her arm. The grip was tight, possessive. "We're leaving," he said through clenched teeth. "Now." She pulled back. "No." It was the first real no she had ever said to him. It felt strange in her mouth, sharp and heavy. He blinked, as if the word itself offended him. Around them, people were watching. phones hovered half-hidden behind bouquets and wine glasses. Dominic forced another smile. "She's emotional," he said lightly. "Pregnancy hormones." "Oh." Harper stepped in front of him. "She's leaving with me." "Move," Dominic ordered. "No," Harper said, matching his tone. For a moment, it looked like he might hit her too. His hand twitched again, veins rising along his wrist. Then he caught sight of the crowd and stopped himself. The mask snapped back in place, smooth and perfect. "Fine," he said. "If she wants to make a scene, let her." The string quartet hesitated, then started playing again. Mozart floated weakly through the night air. Waiters resumed pouring champagne. Conversations resumed, quieter now, full of whispers. The Ashford wedding machine kept running, but nothing felt festive anymore. Grace straightened slowly. Her cheek throbbed. Her fingers still trembled. She turned toward Harper. "I'm not going home tonight," she said. "Not ever again." Harper nodded. "I'll get the car." As she moved toward the driveway, Grace felt the weight of every stare. Some pitied her, some judged her, most pretended not to see. That was how power worked. Everyone saw, but no one spoke, because money bought silence. Money rewrote truth, but not forever. Not this time. Dominic stood motionless in the center of the garden, his smile rigid, his eyes burning holes in her back. She could feel it even as she walked away. That stare, that promise. She knew he wasn't done. He never was. Control was his language, and losing it would make him dangerous. At the gate, Harper returned, holding Grace's purse. "Come on, my car's out front." Grace hesitated. She looked up at the marble mansion one last time. The chandeliers, the silk curtains, the glittering empire that had cost her 3 years of fear. Then she touched her stomach. The baby moved beneath her hand. A small pulse of life, defiant and strong. She whispered, "We're leaving now." As she stepped into the car, the garden lights reflected off the windows. For a moment, she saw her own face in the glass, bruised and wet with tears, and behind it, Dominic's reflection still standing by the fountain, watching her go. What she did not know yet was that the truth was already safe. High above the marble, 16 cameras blinked in perfect rhythm. They had captured everything. The slap, the lies, the moment power shifted. One video that would soon bring down an empire and expose the monster hiding behind the millionaire's smile. Grace locked the heavy wooden door behind her and pressed her back against it. The sound of the latch sliding into place felt louder than the music still drifting up from the garden below. Her heart pounded hard against her ribs. She stared at her reflection in the mirror above the marble sink. A red handprint bloomed across her cheek like a brand. Her lipstick was smeared, her eyes wide and glassy. A single drop of blood traced a path from the corner of her mouth to her chin. She touched the swelling skin and winced. Her fingertips trembled. The slap had been fast, but the echo of it would not stop. It pulsed behind her eyes and down her spine. The silence in the bridal suite pressed in on her. Outside, the orchestra was playing again, pretending everything was fine. Guests were laughing again, pretending they had seen nothing. Pretending the Ashford name meant perfection. Grace turned on the faucet and let cold water run over her hands. The contact stung, bringing her back to reality. She soaked a towel and pressed it gently to her face. The fabric came away, stained pink. She dropped it in the sink and gripped the counter. The marble was smooth and cold. The same kind of cold that had crept into her marriage. A knock came at the door. Soft, hesitant. "Grace?" It was Harper. Grace opened the door just a few inches. Her friend slipped inside and shut it quickly behind her. Harper's face was pale, her eyes furious. "I saw everything," she whispered. "He hit you, Grace, in front of everyone." Grace sank onto the edge of the vanity stool. "He'll say I fell. He'll make them all believe it." "They already do," Harper said bitterly. "His mother's out there telling people you fainted. I heard her myself. She's rewriting what just happened while your face is still bleeding." Grace pressed the towel to her cheek again. "She's done it before. They both have. Every time he hurts me, she cleans it up. Money, charm, and lies." Harper crouched in front of her. "How long has he been doing this?" Grace looked away. The truth was heavy, shameful. A year, maybe longer. It started small. Words, pressure, then shoving. Tonight was just the first time anyone else saw it. Harper took a deep breath. "You can't go back there. You can't let him keep doing this." "I have nowhere else to go," Grace said softly. No job, no apartment. He made sure of that. Everything I have belongs to him. Even the dress I'm wearing. Harper's expression hardened. Then we'll find another way. She stood and grabbed her phone. Owen Grant owes me a favor. He's the head of security. He can pull the camera footage from tonight before Dominic's lawyers bury it. Grace's stomach twisted. He'll destroy the recordings. Not if we get them first. Harper was already typing. If there's proof, they can't gaslight you anymore. Another knock came, louder this time. A man's voice followed, smooth, calm, practiced. Grace, please, baby, open the door. Dominic. Grace froze. The sound of his voice made her skin crawl. Don't, Harper mouthed. Grace didn't move. The doorknob turned slightly. The chain held. Grace, Dominic said, his tone full of fake remorse. I'm so sorry, I lost my temper. You know how much stress I've been under with the merger. Let me explain. Harper whispered. He's playing you. Grace swallowed hard. Go away, Dominic. He paused. His next words came quieter, edged with menace. You're embarrassing yourself. Everyone downstairs thinks you fainted. Don't make this worse. Grace felt tears sting her eyes. The same pattern, the same manipulation. Hurt her, then shame her, then make her doubt herself. She had lived it too many times. Harper grabbed her phone again. Owen says he's on it. He's making a backup now. We'll meet him tomorrow morning. Grace nodded, still staring at the door. He won't stop until he wins. Men. He's not going to win this time. The knocking stopped. Footsteps moved away down the hall. Harper peeked through the peephole. He's gone, for now. Grace exhaled shakily. The room seemed to expand with the silence. The chandelier above them flickered. The air smelled of roses and champagne, a cruel reminder of where she was supposed to be. A guest at a celebration, not a prisoner hiding from her husband. Harper went to the minibar and poured a glass of water. Drink. You're shaking. No. Grace sipped slowly. He always finds a way to make me the crazy one. That's what abusers do, Harper said. They twist reality until you don't trust yourself. Grace looked back at the mirror. I used to think he loved me. He said he'd take care of me. He wanted me to quit my job, stay home, rest for the baby. I thought it was sweet. Now I know it was control. Harper's phone buzzed. She read the message quickly. Owen confirmed he has copies from all 16 cameras. He said one of Dominic's lawyers already offered him $50,000 to delete them. Grace's stomach turned. He didn't take it, did he? No, he said he has daughters. He wants to do the right thing. For the first time that night, Grace felt a small spark of hope. Real evidence existed. Something solid. Something Dominic couldn't twist into lies. Harper touched her arm. We'll go to Owen tomorrow. You'll be safe at my place tonight. Grace hesitated. If I leave now, he'll follow me. He always does. Then we'll be careful. We'll sneak out through the kitchen. Grace stood slowly. Her legs were unsteady. She touched her cheek again, the skin still throbbing beneath her fingertips. The pain felt like proof that she wasn't crazy. I can't believe it took this for me to see what he is, she said quietly. Harper met her eyes in the mirror. You didn't want to believe it. None of us do, until it's too late. Lee. Down below, laughter returned to the garden. The orchestra shifted to a new song. The party continued as if nothing had happened. Grace and Harper stood in silence, listening to the music that now sounded haunting instead of joyful. Grace took one last look at herself. The red mark, the blood, the exhaustion. And behind her reflection, the faint outline of Harper's steady figure. I'm done pretending, she said. Harper smiled sadly. Good. Because this time, you're not alone. Lee? Grace grabbed her clutch and followed Harper to the back stairs. Each step echoed through the empty hallway. When they reached the service exit, Grace paused. The night air hit her face, cool and sharp. She took a breath that felt like the first one in years. Above them, cameras still blinked quietly in the darkness, storing the truth that would soon become her weapon. Grace looked at Harper. Let's go. They stepped into the night together, leaving behind the music, the lies, and the man who believed he would never be caught. Somewhere inside her, beneath the fear, a new kind of strength began to rise. The coffee shop smelled like burnt espresso and rain. Grace sat in a corner booth, her hands wrapped around a paper cup she had barely touched. She hadn't slept. The bruise on her face was fading into a dull yellow. but her body still ached from tension. Every time the door opened, she flinched, half expecting Dominic to walk through it. Harper slid into the seat across from her, her hair pulled into a messy bun, her phone clutched tightly. "He's on his way," she whispered. "Owen said to keep your head down. Dominic's people are already sniffing around the security team. They know the footage exists." Grace's stomach turned. "He'll destroy it. That's what he does. He buys silence." "Not this time," Harper said. "Owen's not for sale." As if on cue, a man in his early 30s entered. He wore a dark security uniform with a badge clipped to his belt. His eyes scanned the room, sharp and cautious, before settling on them. He approached the table and took off his cap. "Mrs. Ashford?" Grace nodded nervously. "Yes. I'm Owen Grant." His voice was steady but low. "Harper told me what happened. I have something you need to see." He slid a black tablet from his bag and placed it on the table. The screen lit up, showing a paused video frame of the Ashford Estates rose garden. Grace's heart began to race. Owen tapped the play icon. The footage rolled silently at first. The crowd, the laughter, the music. The moment before everything went wrong. Then it happened. Dominic's hand lashed out. The sound of the slap filled the tiny cafe through the tablet speakers. Grace saw herself stumble, her head snap back, her palm fly to her cheek. The entire moment captured in brutal clarity. Her throat tightened. Watching it from outside her own body made it worse. It was undeniable, irrefutable, and horrifyingly real. "There are 16 angles," Owen said. "Everyone shows the same thing. No tripping, no fainting, just him hitting you." Grace couldn't take her eyes off the screen. "Why are you doing this for me? You could lose your job." Owen leaned forward. "Because I have 3 daughters. I wouldn't want them to live in a world where people like him get away with this. Your husband's lawyers contacted me within an hour. They offered $50,000 to erase everything. When I refused, they offered $200,000. Harper frowned. "Did you report that?" "I didn't have to. I made copies first." He pulled out a small external drive and slid it across the table toward Grace. "This one's yours. Keep it safe. It has all the footage, timestamps, and metadata. It also includes the audio recording from the valet station. You need to hear this." He tapped the tablet again, switching to another file. Grace heard Dominic's voice, raw and furious. "I don't care if she's pregnant. She humiliated me in front of everyone. She needs to learn her place." Then Natalie's calm tone followed. "Handle it quietly. Your father can't find out. The merger's too important. Pay her off if you have to, but make it disappear." The recording ended. Grace's hand shook as she pressed it to her mouth. "They were planning it. They were going to bury me." "Yes," Owen said. "But now you have proof." Grace looked at Harper, who nodded firmly. "We need to get this to someone who can actually help you. Someone higher than Dominic." "Len." "Richard," Grace whispered. "His father." Owen nodded. "Eleanor Price, his executive assistant, has been with him for 30 years. She's sharp, and she doesn't trust Dominic. I sent her a copy anonymously this morning. If anyone can make Richard see the truth, it's her." Grace blinked back tears. "He'll hate me. I'll destroy his family." Harper leaned forward. "He deserves to know what his son did. This isn't about hate, it's about justice." Owen nodded in agreement. "You're not destroying his family, Grace. Dominic already did that." The noise of the cafe filled the space between them. Cups clinking, steam hissing from the espresso machine. Ordinary life carrying on while hers collapsed. Grace closed the tablet and held the drive in her palm. It felt heavier than it should, like it contained every secret she'd tried to hide. "What happens if they find out you gave this to me?" she asked. "They will," Owen said simply. "But I'm ready for that. My wife's packing bags tonight. We'll be gone before morning. I'll be fine." Grace's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you." Owen stood, placing his cap back on. "Don't thank me yet. What you do with that footage will decide everything. Once you use it, there's no going back." He left before Grace could respond. The bell over the door jingled, then silence. Harper leaned closer. "You heard him. We send this to Eleanor and make sure it reaches Richard. He's the only one with enough power to stop Dominic." Grace stared out the window. Rain streaked the glass, distorting the view of cars passing by. "If I send this, Dominic will come for me. He'll destroy me." Harper's voice softened. "He already tried, but you're still here." Grace nodded slowly. Her fingers tightened around the drive. The baby moved beneath her ribs. a small reminder of what was at stake. She opened her phone and created a new email. To Eleanor Price. Subject: For Richard Ashford. Message: You need to see what your son has done. She hesitated over the send button. Once she pressed it, her old life would be gone. The parties, the penthouse, the illusions, all of it would vanish. Her finger hovered for 3 long seconds. Then she pressed send. Harper exhaled. That's it! It's done! Grace leaned back, her pulse hammering in her ears. There's no turning back now. Good, Harper said. Forward is the only direction that matters. Yeah. For the first time in weeks, Grace felt something close to relief. It wasn't happiness. Not yet, but it was strength. Real, solid strength. The kind that comes from choosing truth over fear. Outside, the rain had stopped. A thin ray of sunlight slipped through the clouds, landing across the table and catching the corner of the flash drive. It glinted like a warning and a promise at the same time. Grace stood. Let's go! I'm 7. As they stepped outside, the wet pavement reflected the pale morning light. The city moved around them, unaware that one small piece of plastic now held the power to topple an empire. In a black SUV parked across the street, a man watched them leave. He picked up his phone and spoke quietly. She has the footage. Then he started the engine and drove away. Grace didn't see him. She only felt the wind on her face, the bruise on her cheek, and the heartbeat of her unborn child steady against her palm. She didn't know it yet, but the war had already begun. The elevator ride to the 60th floor felt endless. Grace watched the numbers climb, while her reflection trembled in the mirrored walls. Her pulse thundered in her ears. Beside her, Eleanor Price stood straight and composed, her silver hair pulled into a tight bun, her expression unreadable. She had been Richard Ashford's assistant for 3 decades. She knew power, and she knew when it was about to explode. When the doors opened, the view of Manhattan stretched across the floor to ceiling windows like a painting of control. The city gleamed below, unaware that one of its richest families was beginning to crack apart. At the far end of the office stood Richard Ashford, tall and still, his gray suit immaculate, his presence cold enough to stop conversation. He did not offer his hand. He only said, "Sit down, Grace." She obeyed. Her palms were slick with sweat. The bruise on her cheek was mostly hidden under makeup, but it still ached. She had imagined this meeting all night, replaying every possible reaction he might have: anger, disbelief, pity. She was ready for anything except the silence that followed. Richard's eyes stayed on the city. "I watched the footage," he said finally. His voice was quiet but carried weight. "All 16 angles." Grace's stomach twisted. "Then you know it's true." "I know what I saw," Richard said. "My son struck his pregnant wife in public. He lied about it, and his mother helped him hide it." He turned toward her then, his face carved with lines of exhaustion and fury. "I built this family from nothing. I built our name, our company, our reputation. I gave my son everything, and he used it to humiliate a woman carrying my grandchild." Grace couldn't find words. She stared at her hands, at the faint tremor in her fingers. Eleanor placed a folder on the desk. "Mr. Ashford, the audio file is included. It confirms Natalie's involvement." Richard opened it and pressed play. Dominic's voice filled the office. "I don't care if she's pregnant. She made me look weak." Then Natalie's calm, poisonous tone followed. "Handle it quietly. Pay her off. Your father must never know." Richard stopped the recording. The silence that followed was suffocating. He exhaled slowly. "That woman has stood beside me for 40 years. And this is what she does in the shadows." Grace finally spoke. "I'm sorry you had to hear that." "You're sorry?" He turned toward her sharply. "You're the one who was assaulted. I'm the one who's ashamed." Eleanor stepped closer. "Sir, what do you want to do?" Richard straightened. "What I should have done a long time ago. End his control." He picked up the phone on his desk. "Get me James Caldwell," he said, "and contact the board. There will be an emergency meeting within the hour." He hung up and looked back at Grace. "You're safe now. He will never touch you again." Grace's throat tightened. "I don't understand. What are you planning?" "I'm removing him from the company, effective immediately. He will lose access to every account, every privilege, every ounce of power my name gives him." Her voice trembled. "He's your son." Richard's eyes softened for the briefest moment. "And you're carrying my granddaughter. One is a legacy I must protect." The other is a mistake I must correct. Brilliant. He walked to the window. His reflection shimmered against the glass. When I was a boy, my father worked in steel mills. He came home every night covered in soot. He never raised a hand to my mother, not once. He told me that a man who hurts the woman who carries his child stops being a man the moment he does it. I never forgot that. Grace listened, unsure if she was meant to speak. Richard continued, Dominic forgot. I won't. The door opened. James Caldwell, the family's attorney, entered with a stack of folders. He was sweating already, sensing the tension. Richard, what's this about? I was told it was urgent. Watch this. Richard handed him the tablet. James's brow furrowed as he played the video. His mouth parted slightly as the slap replayed from angle after angle. The audio followed, the ugly exchange between Dominic and Natalie. When the video ended, James looked older than when he came in. Good God, he whispered. Richard's voice was like steel. I want everything prepared. Removal from the board, legal disinheritance, and protection for Grace and the child. I want it airtight. James hesitated. Richard, this will destroy him. It will destroy the family's public image. The press will have a field day. The merger with Westbrook. Forget the merger, Richard cut in. There's no deal worth my soul. Grace felt the tears rising, but she blinked them back. She had expected resistance. She hadn't expected this kind of conviction. James gathered the folders slowly. And your wife? Richard's jaw clenched. She will learn the consequences of enabling cruelty. I am done pretending we are a perfect family. Eleanor nodded approvingly. I'll draft the public statement. No, Richard said, not yet. First, we protect Grace. She gets everything she needs. Housing, security, legal counsel. She's under my protection now. Grace's breath caught. I don't need your money. You. This isn't charity, Richard said. It's justice. James looked between them. Once this becomes public, Dominic will fight back. He'll claim manipulation. He'll say Grace provoked him. Richard's eyes narrowed. Then we will bury him with facts. We have the video, the audio, witnesses, and my testimony. Let him try. Grace stared down at her lap. Her hand moved instinctively to her belly. The baby kicked softly. For the first time since the wedding, she felt something close to peace. Richard turned back to her. You need your own attorney, someone independent from the family. I'll make the call. The office phone buzzed again. Eleanor answered, listened, and nodded. Dominic is demanding to see you, sir. He's downstairs. Richard's expression hardened. He's not coming up. Security says he's shouting at the desk. Then have them escort him out. If he resists, call the police. Grace's heart skipped. He's here? Richard met her eyes. He won't reach you. Vley. Eleanor disconnected the call. He's been removed from the building. For a moment, silence reclaimed the office. The storm outside the glass walls was beginning to clear. Sunlight broke through the clouds and painted the city gold. Richard looked out again and spoke quietly. Grace, you did the right thing. The truth always looks ugly at first, but it's the only thing that heals. Grace stood, unsure if she should thank him or apologize again. I didn't know what else to do. You did exactly what you needed to do, Richard said. Now let me handle the rest. Eleanor led her toward the elevator. We'll call you soon. Stay somewhere safe tonight. Things are about to move quickly. As the elevator doors closed, Grace looked back at Richard. He was still standing at the window, the city glowing beneath him, the weight of his decision visible in every line of his face. He whispered something to himself, too quiet for anyone to hear. But Eleanor, standing beside him, caught the words. A real man protects. He doesn't hurt. It was the same sentence he had spoken decades ago at his father's funeral. This time, it wasn't nostalgia. It was a vow. Downstairs, Dominic was already shouting into his phone, unaware that his world had just been erased. The Ashford penthouse on Park Avenue had never felt so quiet. Usually it hummed with the sounds of privilege, the clinking of crystal, the polite laughter of people who had never been told no. But that morning, silence filled every marble corner. Natalie Ashford stood at the breakfast table in her silk robe, her pearl necklace already fastened as if armor. She was staring at her phone. The message from Richard was short and sharp. Emergency board meeting. Attendance required. 10 a.m. She didn't know yet that this was not a meeting. It was a reckoning. Downstairs in the garage, Richard's black town car pulled out toward the corporate headquarters. In the back seat, he scrolled through documents Eleanor had prepared overnight. Termination letters, revocation orders, legal filings for immediate removal of Dominic Ashford from all company and family positions. Each page was like a nail, sealing the coffin of his son's legacy. Eleanor sat across from him, calm as ever. James Caldwell has the legal team ready. They'll execute the removal as soon as you sign. Richard nodded, his jaw tight. And the trust? Frozen as of 8 a.m., she said. He won't see another dollar from Ashford Holdings. For the first time that morning, Richard allowed himself to exhale. Good. Then we begin. At the same moment, Dominic woke in his penthouse suite, unaware of how fast the empire beneath him was shifting. His phone buzzed repeatedly. Missed calls, emails. His mother's message at the top. Your father called an emergency meeting. Find out what's going on. He scowled. Typical. Another tantrum about the merger. He poured himself a drink, even though it wasn't yet 9. The glass trembled slightly in his hand. He told himself it was anger, not fear. By the time he arrived at Ashford Industries, Richard was already seated at the head of the long glass conference table. The board members whispered among themselves, sensing tension but not understanding it yet. When Dominic entered, he smiled, confident, charming, as if nothing in the world could touch him. "Father," he said, "to what do I owe the early drama?" Richard didn't smile back. "Sit down." Dominic laughed. "That's serious, huh?" He sat, glancing around the table. "Someone please tell me this isn't about my wife again." "It's about your actions," Richard said. His voice was cold and steady. "And the shame you brought to this family." Eleanor handed each board member a small folder. Inside were printed screenshots, stills from the security footage, 16 angles of the slap, the frozen image of Dominic's hand connecting with Grace's face. The boardroom fell silent. Dominic's smile vanished. "What is this?" "It's the truth," Richard said, "and I will not let you corrupt my company with your violence." One of the directors, an older woman named Helen Park, spoke up. "This was at the wedding? The footage went through company servers?" "Yes," Richard said. "It was recorded by Ashford Industries contracted security, which means it is technically company property. I have every right to use it." Dominic's chair screeched against the floor as he stood. "You can't be serious. You're going to ruin me over one mistake? Over your own daughter-in-law's hysteria?" Richard's voice rose for the first time. "Sit down." The command sliced through the air. Even Dominic obeyed. Richard continued. "You think this is about one slap? It's about who you are. About the pattern of abuse you've hidden behind my name. About your mother covering for you. About lawyers you've paid to silence people. It ends today." Dominic's face flushed red. "You're overreacting. Grace is manipulating you. She sent you that video, didn't she? Of course she did. She wants your sympathy. She wants money." "Money?" Richard repeated. He leaned forward. "She refused every offer I made. She asked for nothing except safety. That's more integrity than you've ever shown." Laughter from one corner of the table broke the tension for a moment. It was bitter, disbelieving. Dominic turned toward it, furious. "You're all enjoying this, aren't you? Watching me get humiliated." Helen Park spoke again. "No, Dominic. We're watching accountability for the first time." Richard lifted the pen beside him. "Effective immediately, you are removed from the board of Ashford Industries. Your voting rights, your salary, your access to company resources are terminated." Dominic laughed again, a hollow sound. "You think you can just erase me? I already have." Richard signed the final document and slid it across the table. "Security will escort you out." 2 uniformed guards entered quietly. Dominic stared at them, disbelief hardening into rage. "You're doing this in front of everyone?" "Yes," Richard said, "because you hurt someone in front of everyone." For a moment, Dominic looked like a child again, desperate, cornered. "You're my father," he said. "You're supposed to protect me." "I protected you for too long," Richard replied, "and it turned you into this." The guards stepped closer. Dominic shoved one away. Papers scattered across the floor. "This isn't over," he shouted. "I'll sue. I'll burn everything you built." "Ho!" Richard didn't move. "You already did." The guards grabbed his arms and pulled him from the room. His curses echoed down the hallway until the doors slammed shut behind him. For a long time, no one spoke. Richard sat motionless, staring at the papers in front of him. His voice, when it came, was quiet but resolute. "Let the record show that Dominic Ashford is no longer part of this company, nor this family." Eleanor gathered the papers. "It's done." Helen Park nodded. "It's the right thing, Richard." "Painful but right." Richard closed his eyes for a moment. Right never feels good at first. At that same hour, Natalie arrived home and found Dominic pacing the living room, his tie undone, his eyes wild. "What did he do?" she demanded. "He disowned me," Dominic spat. "He gave everything to her, to that woman. He's siding with her over his own blood." Natalie froze. "He wouldn't. He already did," Dominic said. "He froze my accounts, my trust, everything." She grabbed her phone. "I'll talk to him." "No," Dominic said, grabbing her wrist. His grip was tight, desperate. "You'll fix this. You always fix things." Natalie pulled away slowly. For the first time, she saw her son clearly. The anger, the entitlement, the danger. "What if it can't be fixed?" she whispered. He stared at her, unblinking. "Then we destroy her. We destroy all of them." Natalie stepped back, her voice trembling. "You sound like your father's worst fear." "La. I sound like an Ashford," he said. "And that means I don't lose." But somewhere deep down, he already had. Across the city, Richard sat alone in his office, staring out at the skyline. The sun was setting behind the glass towers. His reflection looked tired, older than he had ever felt. He whispered to the empty room, "Legacy means nothing without honor." The phone on his desk buzzed. Eleanor's voice came through. "Grace is safe. She's on her way to Connecticut. I arranged protection." Good," Richard said softly. "Let's make sure she stays that way." Outside, the city lights flickered on. Somewhere beneath them, a war for truth and survival had just begun. The morning news hit like a thunderclap. Every channel in New York carried the same headline: "Billionaire Richard Ashford disowns son after domestic violence scandal." Reporters camped outside the Ashford headquarters before sunrise. Photographers filled the sidewalks, their flashes creating a storm of white light. The world had turned its gaze toward a single family. Grace watched it unfold from Harper's apartment. The television played footage of Richard's press conference. His words echoed through the room. "Wealth does not excuse violence. My son's actions are indefensible. From this day forward, he is no longer part of the Ashford legacy." Grace sat on the couch, her hands clasped tightly together. The bruise on her face was fading, but the fear inside her still burned. Harper turned off the television and sat beside her. "He did it," she said softly. "He actually did it." Grace nodded. "And now, everyone knows." Lun. Across the city, Dominic slammed his fist against his desk. The impact sent a stack of newspapers flying to the floor. Every headline carried his disgrace. The slap heard around the world. "Ashford heir exposed. Empire built on violence." He turned to the mirror behind his bar. His reflection looked foreign. Red eyes, unshaven face, anger twisting every feature. "He thinks he can erase me," he muttered. "He thinks he can bury me." His phone rang. He answered on the first ring. "Castellano," he said, recognizing the voice of his new lawyer. Anthony Castellano's tone was smooth and sharp. "I've seen the footage. It's bad, but I can fix it." "How?" Dominic asked. "We change the story. We don't deny the contact. We redefine it. She tripped. You caught her. She misunderstood. We paint her as unstable, hormonal, emotional, a victim of her own imagination. The public forgets quickly if we feed them the right story." Dominic clenched his jaw. "You think that will work?" "It's not about truth," Castellano said. "It's about perception, and perception is a product I sell very well." That afternoon, Dominic and Castellano stood before a wall of microphones. Cameras flashed. Dominic wore a navy suit, his expression carefully rehearsed. Castellano spoke first, his voice confident and professional. "My client deeply regrets the misunderstanding at his cousin's wedding. Mrs. Ashford has been under considerable stress during her pregnancy. The incident has been exaggerated by the media and exploited by those seeking attention." Dominic stepped forward, lowering his gaze as if humbled. "I love my wife," he said. "I love our unborn daughter. I would never intentionally harm them. This has been taken out of context. I ask for privacy as we work to heal our family." The reporters shouted questions, their voices overlapping. "Mr. Ashford, do you deny the video?" Is it true your father disowned you? Have you spoken to Grace? Dominic raised a hand. I've said what I need to say. He turned and walked away, the cameras still flashing. The footage aired within the hour. Grace watched in disbelief. On every channel, Dominic's soft-spoken apology played on repeat. The same man who had hit her now looked like a broken hero. Social media split in two. Some called him a monster. Others called him a victim. The same lie repeated until it began to sound like truth. Harper threw the remote across the room. They're painting you as crazy. Look at these comments. They're calling you unstable. Grace's chest tightened. That's what he does. He twists reality until everyone doubts me. Not everyone, Harper said. Richard believes you, and so do I. We fight back with facts. An hour later, the phone rang. It was Eleanor. Grace, you need to come to the office. Richard wants to see you. When Grace arrived, the building was surrounded by reporters. Security escorted her through a private entrance to the top floor. Richard was waiting, standing beside a television that displayed Dominic's press conference. His face was hard, but his eyes held something deeper. Disappointment mixed with resolve. He's using the media to rewrite the story, Richard said. We'll answer him with the truth. How? Grace asked quietly. Tomorrow morning, I'm releasing the unedited footage to the press. Every second, every angle, no narration, just the truth. Grace's breath caught. That will destroy him. That's the point, Richard said. He's already trying to destroy you. I won't let him win. Eleanor stepped forward. Our legal team will prepare a statement. We'll emphasize transparency. We'll let the public judge. Grace hesitated. The public doesn't always care about truth. They care about spectacle. Yunnan. Richard nodded. Then we'll give them both. That night, the video leaked before the official release. Someone within the media division sent it to multiple outlets. By midnight, it had gone viral. 16 angles, high definition, clear audio. The slap, the lies, the cover-up. Millions watched in disbelief. Dominic woke to a flood of calls. Reporters outside his building. His mother on the phone, panicked. It's everywhere, Natalie cried. Everyone's seen it. He grabbed his keys and stormed out. I'm going to fix this. Dominique's don't. But he was already gone. By dawn, news vans lined the streets in front of the Ashford residence. Grace stayed hidden inside Harper's apartment, the curtains drawn. She could hear the noise of the world through the glass. Cars, voices, chaos. Her phone buzzed non-stop. Messages from strangers, journalists, old friends. Some offered sympathy. Others accused her of destroying a good man. Harper scrolled through social media. The footage hit 20 million views overnight. Grace covered her face with her hands. I didn't want this. I just wanted him to stop. Across town, Dominic sat in Castellano's office. The lawyer looked grim. Damage control is no longer possible. The video is too clear. Your only chance now is to claim emotional distress. Say it was an accident, an outburst from stress. We pivot from denial to remorse. Dominic slammed his hand on the desk. I'm not apologizing again. You'll do whatever it takes, Castellano said coldly, because right now you're not just losing your company, you're losing your freedom. The district attorney is watching this. You could face assault charges. For the first time, real fear flickered across Dominic's face. He wouldn't let that happen. My father wouldn't let me go to jail. Castellano leaned back. Your father is the reason it will happen. Dominic stood abruptly and walked out. His phone rang again. This time, it was his mother. Dominic, please, listen to me. Your father means what he says. You need to leave town. Lay low. We'll figure this out. But Dominic wasn't listening. He was already planning his next move. That night, he stared out the window of his penthouse, the city lights flickering below. Every building, every light, every symbol of power now belonged to someone else. To his father, to Grace, to the truth. He whispered to the empty room, if they want war, they'll get one. Somewhere across the city, Grace felt a chill crawl down her spine, as if the night itself had whispered back. The air in Connecticut was cold and clean, nothing like Manhattan's metallic haze. Grace stood at the window of the safe house, watching the wind move through the tall trees. The house belonged to one of Richard's business associates, hidden behind miles of private land. No one could reach her here, or so everyone believed. Harper was asleep on the couch, her laptop still open beside her. A half-empty cup of tea had gone cold. Grace tried to close her eyes, but her body refused to rest. Every sound made her flinch. Every gust of wind felt like footsteps. Her instincts screamed that peace never lasted. Around midnight, she went into the kitchen to refill her glass. The floorboards creaked beneath her bare feet. The silence felt too heavy, like a breath held too long. She set the glass down and turned toward the door. That was when she heard it, the crunch of gravel outside. Slow, deliberate. Her heart jumped. She froze, listening. One step, then another. Someone was walking around the porch. Grace grabbed her phone. No signal. The storm earlier had knocked out the tower. She whispered Harper's name, but her voice came out thin and shaky. The front door handle rattled. Harper jolted awake. What was that? Before Grace could answer, a shadow passed the window. A man's silhouette, tall and broad, moving toward the side of the house. Lock the back door, Grace said. Now. Harper ran. Grace moved toward the front, her hands trembling. She remembered the emergency number Richard had given her, the one for private security. She dialed, but the call wouldn't go through. A second later, glass shattered in the hallway. The sound was sharp and violent. Grace screamed. Harper grabbed the fire poker from the fireplace and ran to her side. Then he appeared. Dominic. He stepped through the broken window, his coat soaked with rain, his eyes burning with fury. You thought you could hide from me? He said. His voice was low, almost calm, but something feral lived underneath it. Grace backed away. You're not supposed to be here. There's a restraining order. He laughed once, a hollow sound. You think a piece of paper can stop me? You humiliated me in front of the world. You turned my father against me. You destroyed my name. You destroyed it yourself, Grace said, her voice shaking. He took another step forward. I made you. You were nothing before me. No one even knew your name. Harper raised the poker. Take one more step and I'll put this through your skull. Dominic's eyes flicked toward her. Stay out of this. I'm not afraid of you, Harper said, but her voice betrayed her. Dominic moved fast, grabbing her wrist and shoving her aside. The poker clattered to the floor. Grace rushed to help, but he caught her by the arm. His grip was iron. You belong to me, he said. You and that baby. Grace tried to pull away. Let go. No. You think you can take my child away from me? You think you can live in one of my houses and call yourself free? The sound of sirens in the distance broke through his shouting. He froze. Grace didn't. She kicked him in the leg, breaking his balance. He stumbled, cursing, and she ran. Harper scrambled to her feet and followed. They reached the stairs just as Dominic lunged again, his hand closing around Grace's dress. The fabric tore as she yanked herself free. They made it to the kitchen. Harper grabbed the phone again, but there was still no signal. Come on, she muttered. Come on. Outside, blue and red lights flickered through the trees. The police had found them. Dominic turned toward the window, rage distorting his face. You called them, he said. They called themselves, Grace said. Your father made sure I'd be protected. He glared at her, breathing hard. You think this ends with me in handcuffs? You think that baby will grow up with his name? She's mine, Grace. You can't erase me. The front door burst open. Police! A voice shouted. Drop your weapon and step back. Dominic spun around, his hands raised, his expression shifting from rage to mock innocence. Officers, he said, there's been a misunderstanding. The officers advanced, weapons drawn. Grace stood frozen, shaking. One of the officers guided her and Harper behind him. You're safe now, ma'am, he said. But Dominic wasn't finished. He took a step toward Grace, his voice cracking. You'll regret this, he hissed. You'll regret everything. The officers pinned him to the floor. The cuffs clicked shut. He struggled, shouting, You can't take her from me. She's my wife. She's carrying my blood. Grace turned away, tears streaming down her face. Harper put an arm around her shoulders. It's over, she whispered. But Grace knew it wasn't. Not really. Not until the world saw what kind of man he truly was. As they led Dominic out into the rain, Richard's black SUV pulled up behind the police cars. He stepped out, umbrella in hand, his face pale but composed. When he saw Grace, his expression broke into something human, relief mixed with guilt. Are you hurt? He asked, rushing to her. Grace shook her head. He tried to break in. He said he wanted the baby. Richard's jaw clenched. "He'll never touch either of you again, I swear it." The officer approached him. "He's in custody, Mr. Ashford. He resisted arrest, but we subdued him." Richard nodded. "Keep him locked up. I'll make sure the charges stick." As Dominic was shoved into the police car, he looked out through the rain-smeared window. His glare found his father. "You're killing your own blood," he shouted. Richard met his gaze without flinching. "I'm saving what's left of it." The car doors slammed, muffling Dominic's curses. The convoy drove off into the night, lights flashing through the rain. Grace stood in the mud, barefoot, trembling. Richard took off his coat and draped it over her shoulders. "It's over now," he said again, though his voice carried no certainty. Inside the house, Harper sat on the floor, shaking her head. "He would have killed you. I saw it in his eyes." Grace sank beside her. "He already killed the person I used to be." Outside, the last police car disappeared down the driveway. The night fell quiet again, the kind of silence that comes only after chaos. Richard looked at the shattered window and the broken glass scattered across the floor. "This house isn't safe anymore," he said. "Tomorrow you're moving somewhere, they'll never find you." Grace nodded. She placed a hand on her stomach, feeling the faint kick beneath her palm. "She's strong," she whispered. "She survived tonight." Richard gave a small nod. "So did you." For the first time, Grace believed him. She looked out into the darkness, the rain finally slowing to a drizzle. The flashing lights were gone, but their reflections still shimmered on the wet ground, a reminder of the storm that had passed, and the one still waiting to come. The courthouse in downtown Hartford was a building of glass and stone that seemed to hold its breath. Reporters gathered on the steps, their microphones raised like weapons, shouting questions that echoed off the walls. The case had become national news. Every outlet called it the Ashford scandal. Inside, the air smelled of polished wood and tension. Grace sat at the plaintiff's table beside her lawyer, Sarah Chen, who flipped through a stack of files. Her hands trembled slightly, but her eyes stayed sharp. Across the aisle, Dominic sat with his defense team, led by Anthony Castellano. He wore a black suit, his hair slicked back, his expression calm, but his eyes burned when they found her. The judge entered. "All rise." Everyone stood. Grace's heart pounded so hard she thought it might drown out the judge's voice. She felt the weight of the moment pressing down on her chest. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about truth, about what would be remembered after all the lies were gone. "Mrs. Grace Ashford versus Mr. Dominic Ashford," the clerk announced. The judge nodded. "You may proceed." Sarah rose first. Her tone was clear and firm. "Your Honor, the evidence we will present is not speculation, it is fact. The defendant assaulted his wife, who was 7 months pregnant, during a public event. 16 surveillance cameras captured the incident from multiple angles. There are no distortions, no edits, no doubt. The defendant then attempted to conceal the crime through intimidation and bribery. Today, we will show not just what he did, but the deliberate cruelty behind it." Castellano stood next, buttoning his jacket. His voice carried the smooth confidence of a man used to winning. "Your Honor, my client deeply regrets what occurred, but this is not a story of abuse. It is a story of misunderstanding, of manipulation, and of a woman whose emotional instability has been exploited by powerful interests, including my client's estranged father." Grace clenched her fists under the table. Dominic sat motionless, staring straight ahead. The first video played on the screen, the slap, the silence, the aftermath. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Even the judge leaned forward slightly. Every sound, every angle, every detail was there. Dominic's hand connecting with her face, the crowd freezing, the lie that followed. Sarah paused the footage. "Your Honor, this is not the reaction of a man who accidentally brushed his wife. This is an act of violence, and this was not the first time." Grace swallowed hard. Her throat felt dry. She had relived this moment too many times, but seeing it projected on a 10-foot screen made it feel new again. Raw, cruel, undeniable. Castellano rose. "The video lacks context. There was no intent to harm. The plaintiff stumbled, and my client reached to steady her. The sound has been misinterpreted." "Misinterpreted?" Sarah repeated. "Let's listen to what he said afterward." She played the second clip, the audio recorded near the valet station. Dominic's voice filled the courtroom. "I don't care if she's pregnant. She humiliated me in front of everyone." The words cut through the air like a knife. The jurors' faces hardened. Dominic's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Sarah turned to the judge. "Intent, Your Honor." Castellano's voice faltered for the first time. The statement was made in anger, not evidence of assault. Richard sat behind Grace in the first row, his hands folded, his eyes locked on his son. When the audio ended, he stood. "Your Honor, with your permission, I'd like to testify." The courtroom buzzed. The judge nodded. "Proceed." Richard took the stand. He looked older than he had a week ago, but his voice carried the calm of conviction. "I am Richard Ashford, Dominic's father. I have watched the footage. I have heard the audio. And I have seen the pattern. This is not about anger. This is about entitlement. My son believes wealth protects him from consequence. It does not." Castellano rose. "Mr. Ashford, are you aware that your testimony could damage your company's reputation?" Richard turned his gaze toward him. "The company's reputation means nothing if it is built on silence. I will not be the kind of man who hides evil to preserve an empire." He looked directly at Dominic. "You raised your hand against a woman carrying my grandchild. That moment ended everything between us." Dominic's mask slipped. "You're destroying your own family." "No," Richard said. "I'm saving what's left of it." The judge banged the gavel. "Order." Grace's eyes filled with tears. She had dreamed of someone standing up for her like this, and now it was happening in front of the world. After Richard stepped down, Sarah called the next witness, Harper. She recounted the night of the wedding, the confrontation, and the night Dominic broke into the Connecticut house. Her voice shook only once, when she said, "He looked at her like she was something to be owned." By the time Sarah finished, the courtroom was silent again. Then Castellano made his move. "Your Honor, I call Mrs. Natalie Ashford." The room stirred. Grace's stomach dropped as Natalie walked in, her posture perfect, her pearls gleaming under the lights. She looked directly at Richard as she took the stand. "Mrs. Ashford," Castellano said, "did you witness any abuse firsthand?" Natalie's voice was calm. "No. My son has a temper. Yes, but he loves his wife. He made a mistake, but this has been twisted by people who want revenge." Sarah stood. "Is it true, Mrs. Ashford, that you were recorded advising your son to cover up the assault?" Natalie's eyes flashed. "I was protecting my family." "By lying?" Sarah asked. Natalie hesitated. The courtroom held its breath. Richard spoke from his seat. "Answer her." Natalie's composure cracked. "I was afraid," she said. "Afraid of losing everything." Sarah nodded slowly. "You already did." Natalie lowered her gaze. The courtroom was silent except for the sound of her quiet breathing. By the afternoon, the evidence was complete. The videos, the audio, the testimonies. The truth had been stripped bare. Dominic stared at the floor, his confidence gone. When the judge called for a recess, reporters rushed from the courtroom to broadcast what they had seen. Grace stayed seated. Her body trembled with exhaustion, but her heart felt lighter than it had in months. Richard put a hand on her shoulder. "You were brave today," he said quietly. She nodded. "So were you." "No." Across the aisle, Dominic whispered something to Castellano. The lawyer nodded grimly, already planning the next move. But deep down, both men knew the truth had already won. Outside, the sky had turned gray. Rain began to fall again, tapping against the courthouse windows. Grace watched the drops slide down the glass, each one catching the faint reflection of the courtroom behind her. Tomorrow would bring the verdict, but tonight, for the first time in a long time, she wasn't afraid of what it would be. The sky above the courthouse was the color of lead. A steady rain fell over the city as people lined the steps, umbrellas blooming like dark flowers. Inside, the courtroom was packed beyond capacity. Reporters filled every bench. Cameras waited outside the doors, ready to catch the first faces to emerge. It was Judgment Day. Grace sat silently beside her lawyer, Sarah Chen, her hands clasped in her lap. She had barely slept the night before. Each second of waiting stretched longer than it should. Across the aisle, Dominic sat motionless. His once perfect suit was wrinkled, his tie loosened. For the first time, there was no arrogance in his posture, only the look of a man who had finally realized that power could not buy him forgiveness. The judge entered. All rise. Everyone stood. The sound of chairs scraping against the floor echoed through the room like thunder. When they sat again, the judge's voice filled the silence. After reviewing all evidence, including video footage, audio recordings, and witness testimony, this court finds the defendant, Mr. Dominic Ashford, guilty of aggravated assault and intimidation. Gasps rippled through the room. Dominic's face turned pale. "No," he muttered. His voice cracked. "No, this isn't happening." The judge continued. The court also recognizes the plaintiff, Mrs. Grace Ashford, for her courage in coming forward despite severe intimidation. Sentencing will include a permanent restraining order and full custody rights granted to Mrs. Ashford for the child she carries. Tears filled Grace's eyes. She had imagined this moment countless times, but nothing could prepare her for the rush of relief that swept through her. The weight that had crushed her for months finally lifted. Dominic rose from his seat. "This is insane. She's lying. She planned this from the start. She and my father—" "Enough," the judge said sharply. "You will remain silent or be held in contempt." Two officers stepped closer. Dominic glared at them but sat down, his fists clenched. The gavel struck once. The verdict was final. Reporters burst into motion, leaving the courtroom to deliver breaking news. The story would flood every screen in America within minutes. Grace stayed seated, frozen between shock and relief. Richard stood slowly from the back row and approached her. He didn't speak, only placed a hand on her shoulder. It was a simple gesture, but it carried everything words couldn't. Sarah whispered, "It's over, Grace. You won." Grace nodded faintly. "I didn't win. The truth did." Across the aisle, Dominic's lawyer leaned close, whispering urgently. Dominic's face twisted with panic. "We'll appeal," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "This isn't over." Richard turned toward him. His voice was quiet but sharp. "Yes, it is." The officers escorted Dominic from the courtroom. The sound of the handcuffs clicking echoed like a closing door. He struggled once, then stopped. Cameras flashed through the small glass window as they led him outside. The world was watching his downfall. Natalie remained seated in the back, her head bowed. She hadn't spoken since the previous day. When she finally looked up, her eyes met Richard's. He gave her a long, unreadable look, then turned away. There was nothing left to say. Outside, rain pounded against the courthouse steps. Reporters swarmed as the police car pulled away. Dominic's face was visible through the tinted glass, pale and hollow. Once, he had been the face of power. Now he was the image of disgrace. Grace and Sarah exited through a side door, shielded by security. The flash of cameras followed them anyway. Voices shouted questions. "Grace, how do you feel about the verdict? What will you do next? Are you afraid of retaliation?" Grace paused at the bottom of the steps. The rain soaked through her coat, but she didn't care. "I feel free," she said simply. It was the only statement she would make. That night, she returned to the hospital for a final checkup. The baby's heartbeat thudded steadily through the monitor. The doctor smiled. "She's strong," he said. "You both are." Grace smiled weakly. "Hope," she whispered. "That's her name." Across town, Richard sat in his office, watching the live news coverage. The headlines scrolled across the screen. Ashford heir convicted. Empire in ruins. The anchor's voice carried a mix of awe and disbelief. "Richard," Eleanor said quietly, standing beside him. "It's done." He nodded. "No, not yet. Now we rebuild." He turned off the television. For the first time in years, the office felt still, almost peaceful. He thought about everything he had lost. His marriage, his son, his company's flawless image. And then he thought about what he had regained. A sense of honor, a future that might not be built on silence. Meanwhile, Dominic sat alone in a holding cell. The sound of dripping water echoed in the small concrete space. His thoughts raced, wild and desperate. He replayed the slap again and again in his mind, trying to justify it, trying to blame her, trying to believe he was still in control. But control was gone. The empire that had protected him was gone. His father's name, his company, his fortune, all gone. He looked up at the small barred window. The rain outside had stopped. The air smelled of iron and dust. For the first time, Dominic Ashford was alone with himself, and he didn't like what he saw. At dawn, a letter arrived at the courthouse addressed to Grace. It came from Richard. Inside was a short note written in his neat, deliberate handwriting. "You stood against everything we taught you to fear. That makes you stronger than all of us. When the world forgets, remember that truth never does. R.A." Grace read it twice. Then she folded it and placed it in her bag. She looked out the hospital window at the city, waking beneath the gray morning sky. For the first time in months, the light didn't feel harsh. It felt clean. Later that morning, Sarah arrived with a smile. "The restraining order is permanent. You and your daughter are officially safe." Grace nodded. "Thank you." "Where will you go now?" Sarah asked. "Home," Grace said. "Wherever that finally is." "None." As she walked out of the hospital, the air smelled of rain and sunlight. A photographer tried to follow her, but security turned him away. She stepped into the waiting car where Harper was already seated. Her friend smiled through tears. "You did it." Grace shook her head. "We did it." The car pulled away from the curb, blending into the slow morning traffic. Behind them, the courthouse faded into the distance. The chapter of fear was closing. Ahead of them, the world opened again, vast and uncertain but full of possibility. For a moment, Grace placed her hand on her stomach. The baby kicked softly, steady and alive. She whispered to herself, "We're free now." The city moved around them, indifferent and endless. But for Grace, the world had changed forever. A full year had passed since the verdict, but in Grace's memory, the courtroom still echoed. The sound of the gavel, the judge's words, and the hum of whispers after Dominic's conviction lived in her mind like an old song she could not forget. The city had moved on, as cities always do, but her life had been reborn from the wreckage. It was spring in Los Angeles, and the morning sunlight spread gently across the glass facade of a new building in downtown. Its sign glimmered softly under the rising Sunday Hope Foundation. The letters were etched in silver, simple and proud. The foundation provided legal aid, housing, and counseling for women who had survived domestic abuse. The name had been her idea. Hope was more than her daughter's name. It was the meaning of everything she had fought for. Inside the lobby, journalists and guests gathered for the grand opening. Flowers lined the marble floor. The air was filled with quiet anticipation. Grace stood near the podium, holding her daughter in her arms. The little girl had her father's gray eyes, but none of his darkness. She smiled easily, her small hands clutching the locket around her mother's neck. Harper stood beside the podium, adjusting the microphone. "You're ready?" she asked. Grace smiled faintly. "As ready as I'll ever be." She stepped forward. The room fell silent. Cameras pointed toward her, waiting. Grace's voice was calm but steady. "1 year ago, I stood in a courtroom and told the truth. I was terrified, but I knew silence would destroy me more than his hands ever could. Today, I stand here not as a victim, but as a survivor. The Hope Foundation exists, so no woman has to face what I faced alone." Applause filled the hall. She continued, her eyes bright but dry. "When I was trapped, I believed that love could fix cruelty, that if I tried hard enough, he would change. But love cannot heal what chooses not to be healed. What heals us is truth, and what saves us is the belief that we deserve better." At the back of the room, Richard watched quietly. He stood beside Eleanor, who smiled softly, her usual stoicism replaced by warmth. Richard looked older now, his hair silver at the temples, but his eyes still carried strength. When Grace's speech ended, he was the first to stand and clap. After the ceremony, the two of them walked outside together. The air smelled of fresh flowers and sunlight. Grace shifted her daughter to her other arm. Richard looked down at the baby and smiled. "She has your smile," he said. "She has your strength," Grace replied. He nodded. "I never thought I would find peace again, not after what happened." "Peace doesn't come from forgetting," she said softly. "It comes from facing it." They stood in silence for a moment, watching the press pack up their equipment. Across the street, a billboard still carried the fading headline from last year's scandal: "Ashford heir sentenced." Soon, even that would be replaced by newer news, newer chaos. But for Grace, the silence between those headlines was enough. Later that afternoon, Grace returned to her home in Pasadena. The sun cast long golden beams through the living room windows. Harper was in the kitchen, preparing tea, while Sarah Chen sat on the sofa reading a legal brief. They had all become family in a strange way, bonded by the fire they had walked through together. Harper looked up. "So, how does it feel to own a foundation that already has a waiting list of women asking for help?" Grace smiled. "It feels like purpose." Sarah closed her file. "Richard's lawyers finalized the paperwork this morning. Hope's trust fund is permanent. It can't be touched or revoked, not even by him." Grace nodded slowly. "Good. That's how it should be." For a brief second, the room was quiet again. Then her daughter stirred in her arms, letting out a small cry. Grace rocked her gently. "Shh, baby. It's okay." Harper leaned closer. "She's growing so fast. She looks just like you when she smiles." Grace kissed the baby's forehead. "She's everything he tried to destroy and everything he couldn't." Outside, the light began to fade. The sky turned a soft orange, melting into pink and violet hues. Grace walked to the window and looked out toward the horizon. Somewhere beyond those clouds was the memory of everything that had broken her. Somewhere in that distance, Dominic was still serving his sentence, alone, forgotten by the empire he once ruled. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting the peace sink in. Then she whispered to herself, "It's finally over." But part of her knew it wasn't just an ending, it was a beginning. That evening, after her friends left, Grace put the baby to sleep and climbed the stairs of the old Carter mansion. Richard had given her the house a month earlier, insisting that it be restored to its original beauty. The marble staircase gleamed under soft white light. The fifth step, the one where she had fallen during the worst night of her life, still bore a faint crack, a scar the builders had wanted to fix, but she refused to erase. She held a small bouquet of light sky blue flowers in her hands, the same color as the dress she had worn that night. She placed the flowers gently on the fifth step and whispered, "For the girl who thought she was weak." Her voice trembled but didn't break. "And for the woman who learned she wasn't." The air felt warm and still. Through the tall window, the moonlight spilled across the marble, washing it in pale silver. The crack on the fifth step shimmered faintly, no longer a wound but a memory. Grace stood there for a long time, listening to the quiet house, to the soft ticking of the clock downstairs, to the sound of her daughter breathing peacefully in the nursery. Every sound felt like proof that life had continued, that she had survived. When she finally turned to go, she paused one last time at the top of the stairs and whispered a final promise. "You'll never know fear, Hope. Only strength, only love." Downstairs, the faint hum of the city reached through the open window. Somewhere outside, a breeze moved through the garden, carrying the scent of flowers through the night air. Grace walked back to her room, closing the door behind her. She lay beside her daughter, the baby's tiny fingers curled around hers. The moonlight fell across both of them, soft and steady. The world had changed. The scars remained, but they no longer defined her. And as the clock struck midnight, Grace smiled through the quiet. For the first time in years, she could breathe without pain. The darkness that had once ruled her life had finally given way to morning,